partnering together and they blame you for the work that's not getting done when they're really the problem. And unfortunately, because of their seniority, position, tenure, whatever, you end up being the scapegoat. Well, it's happened to me. And it's one of the worst feelings because you feel defenseless, helpless. That's why I tell you, and I've told you in previous episodes, document everything. You see, scapegoating is a really big thing that's happened to many, many of us, whether that's in a corporate America or any other kind of situation. And you really need to learn how to navigate it. So let me tell you a story. I was working in Florida and I worked for a leader who had me working multiple projects as an HR kind of, it was more than an intern, less than a business partner, right? I was working specifically on developing or revamping policies for this particular department. And it wasn't my job. My job was to assist a guy named Joe. And everyone knew Joe didn't do any work. We all knew it. It was a very well-known thing. And people that had to work with Joe was like, oh my God, I know I'm gonna have to do this work and he's gonna try to take the credit. So not only could you be a scapegoat, but you're also working for somebody who's a credit stealer. And in this one particular instance, I'm working with Joe to do these policies, and I've created a project plan and aligned all the people who own the policies and the dates that I'm going to meet with them. And in coordinating with some very busy people who had big jobs, some folks couldn't meet for 2 or 3 months. And what Joe scoped out as maybe a 30-day job ended up being probably like a 4 to 5 month job, just because most people aren't really trying to spend time updating policies in terms of the priority list. It's one of those things that's a nice to have. It's necessary, and it usually doesn't meet the priority list. And so in trying to coordinate, and I would give Joe updates so he would be informed, because it was really Joe's work and I was supposed to be supporting Joe. And one of the updates, I told him, hey, listen, I got with this leader. We were trying to meet in the next 2 weeks. I know this is over your deadline, but this person can't meet for another 4. I sent the note at about 4:45, I probably sent the note around 3:30. Let's just say I sent it at 4:45, just for the sake of argument. And I sent him a note that, hey, listen, I can't meet with him for another 4 weeks. Now, 2 things that make this really interesting. Joe left work every day at 4:59. We all knew, because the way that the office was situated was a big fat kind of rectangle. And so the cubes were in the middle, offices around the perimeter. And we could all hear his door like clockwork at 4:59. Boom. His door's closing. We know it's 4:59. Joe's out the door. Him in his Hawaiian shirt. And so at 4:45, I sent Joe this note. And I promise you, my cube was every bit of 75 feet from Joe's office. I sent the note at let's just say it's 4:45, but I almost sent it earlier, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. My cube is 75 feet from Joe's office. At 4:59, Joe sends this most passive aggressive email and says, Natalie, thanks for the update, but as you can clearly look at the calendar, Steven is available on these days and these times. You should book with him then. The passive aggressive email would have been enough, but what made it worse was that he copied my manager and like 2 or 3 other people. And I was livid. I ran to Joe's office to see if he was still there, knowing again it was 4:59. I saw the email at like 5:01, but he was gone. They were like, oh yeah, you just missed him. What would you have done? What would you have done knowing that, like, not only did you act like you don't trust me, but you also put me on blast to like a ton of other people and my leader to make me look like I'm not doing my job? Well, I'm gonna tell you what I did, and I don't recommend it, but knowing that we had some history and others had history with Joe, I walked into my leader's office and I said, are you going to handle him or should I? You may think this is a little harsh. I wouldn't recommend it. But a couple things that I knew. The leader that I worked with at that time was super sweet, but also a bit of a pacifist. very conflict averse, typically didn't nip things in the, the leader didn't often do conflict unless it was like to direct reports, right? So blessed are the peacemakers. And I also want a leader who can engage conflict effectively. And this was not one of those times. And I sat down and I explained to her what happened and how it made me feel and how I was in the right. And I had, because I tell you, document everything. Because I knew my leader was a pacifist. She didn't completely suck. She wasn't one of the people that sucked the life out of you. But I knew that I had to cover all my bases. She was actually quite a sweet woman. But I knew I had to have all my bases covered. I'm like, look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you everything that I've done. And she attempted to coach me on how to reconcile this with this guy, which was super frustrating because at that point I wanted her to also help defend me because everyone knew that Joe did no work. And I think this is the thing where you have to realize where these things are common in a lot of work environments. See, in most work environments, you have hamsters and you have ducks. I'm sure you're wondering why I'm saying this. A hamster is someone who does what I call performance theater. See, when you walk through the security at the TSA or what have you, there's security and then there's security theater. And in a lot of places, there's security theater to make you feel safe, but it really doesn't do anything to make you more secure. So the thing that you stand in that circles around, that's actual security. But then there are other parts that are security theater. Like if you walk into the convenience store and you see a camera and it may not be on, that's called security theater. It's there to make you think it's working, but it's not. Hamster workers are the same way. They usually don't work until someone's looking and they're working on a hamster wheel going nowhere. And they're doing so fast because they know people are looking. Joe was a hamster. On the other side, you have people who are ducks. Some people are ducks where they will work in silence, but they're under the water and you don't know that they're working, right? I'm probably more of like a lion because I roar while I work. I'm like, I'm working. I don't know. At least that's where I was when I was early in my career. But Joe was definitely a hamster. And it frustrates a lot of the ducks and the lions and the whatever classification of worker you are that gets work done. If you're hamster wheeling it and only showing up when people are looking, everyone else around you is really frustrated. And what was even more frustrating is that I wanted my leader to go to bat for me and defend me because it wasn't the first time that happened. And I was met with very little support. And so while this isn't like a life-shattering story like ones I've told you in the past, it was still frustrating. But I ended up having to learn how to fend for myself. So the key takeaway here is you have to learn how to have a good conflict. You see, many of us hate conflict. We don't like to push back on people. We don't like to defend our position. And frankly, a lot of us don't know how. But one of the things that you can do for yourself in this life, in your working life, is learn, one, when to hold them and when to fold them, but mostly when to realize when you need to have a conflict and how to prepare yourself for that conflict. Not because you want to be confrontational, but because you want to make a good end for your entire purpose, your entire strategy of your work situation, your career, right? Not always for the wanting to be right, because there's a difference between wanting to be right and wanting to resolve a conflict. Because I could have easily tucked my tail between my legs and said, you know what, he won this one, I'll get him the next go round. But I wanted to stand up for my conviction of what you won't do is try to embarrass me in front of my boss and my colleagues. And I'm calling party foul on that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that in the right environment. Not publicly, but pulling someone aside and saying, here's what's happened. Here's how I experienced it. Is that what you intended? And so you can best believe that I met Joe in his office at 7:59 in the morning when he got there and said, can I talk to you for a second? And we had a conversation. And I said, hey, Joe, I sent you an email with the intention of giving you a status. And while I got your email back right before you left for work, it seemed as if you really didn't want to talk to me. And I was also kind of taken aback by the fact that you copied a whole bunch of other people rather than just talking to me. What was your intention? Because I don't feel good about what you did. And I can tell you that our conversation was met with stutters. He was very, he turned red, which is always fun, right? But eventually we got to an agreement of here's how we're going to work together. And you have to help people learn how to treat you. There's nothing wrong with pushing back when you can do it respectfully. It's important for you to stand your ground, especially when you know you're right in the right situation. You have to have discernment. You shouldn't be, guns blazing. I will tell you early in my career, I was, raging against the machine and guns blazing on every wrongdoing. Don't do that. It's messy. But I will say, when you know you have done all you can do and you've done it with the best of intentions, confronting is a good way to clear and create clear boundaries for yourself and the people you work for. In doing so, I earned a new level of respect from Joe. I was able to show my leader, who was a bit of a pacifist, that I could handle myself. And maybe I was wrong for wanting her to step in. And let me be clear, it wasn't the first time. I had taken her things before and told her, here's what I'm going to do. But I want you to make sure I'm not trying to blow up, the situation. And at the end of the day, I think what made this so bad is I felt betrayed by Joe because we were supposed to be a team. We were supposed to be working together. But frankly, I would have betrayed myself more if I hadn't have stood up to him. And that's the key. More often than not, we betray ourselves far more than anybody else betrays us. Because I could have let it slide and Joe would have never thought twice about doing it again because he would have done it again because he's done it to other people. And so think about the last time someone has scapegoated you, that's used you as the sacrificial lamb to why things aren't getting done. Is it your manager? Is it a team member? Is it a friend? What's the conflict you need to have in order to create the appropriate boundaries, to create the appropriate level of peace, to make sure that they're not sucking the life out of you? You see, scapegoating is really easy because you can just abdicate accountability. But what's hard is not allowing people to scapegoat you, to showing them that you have a boundary, to showing them that you have a standard, and that in order to have a healthy working relationship, we should create this together and we're going to have some rules and modus operandi. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of us are afraid of conflict because we don't want to be hurt. We don't want to feel rejected. And at times we just don't know how to have it. I'll say to you, there are several books that I'd recommend. Crucial Conversations is one of my favorite books, one of my favorite courses. If you have not and need to take it, take it. It's worth it. It's a little pricey, but I promise you it will help frame how you have a conversation. Because when you're having a conflict, it's not to win, it's to resolve something. Your conflict shouldn't be to, I'm going to get my way. No, it should be to come to a resolution where you have your boundaries and your integrity intact and you can move forward. Because that's ultimately what's going to help move your career and move you to another place and plane in your life and your psyche and your emotions and everything else when it comes to work. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're going to be talking about some more great things next time. Things like micromanagement, if we haven't talked about it already. Also, we'll be talking about the liar. Oh my gosh, have you ever had a liar at work? So here's what I want you to do. If you enjoy this, like, share, subscribe, join our Facebook page. Go ahead and check out our website. And coming soon, we're going to be featuring your stories on this podcast. I want to hear about your sucky boss. I want you to go to my webpage, yourbosssucks.com, and I want you to tell us about the situations that are making you lose sleep, lose energy, lose pride in yourself. Like, tell us what's happening. We want to hear from you. We want to know what other things we should be pulling from so that we can help you navigate your sucky boss situation. So remember, until next time, don't let your boss suck the life out of you.